When I was selecting the locations for Stone, the overall effect was really to present the absolute beauty of the city of Sydney, especially in the beautiful golden summer light that starts to come out around October and lasts through to about March. Of course, there was an exception, which was the opening montage, which demonstrates how our beautiful city is being polluted. And the very first shot of the picture, which is a picture of Captain Cook's monument, the stone where the first Englishman landed in Australia in 1770, was only conceived by me after the whole picture had been finished. And I thought, well, that's the way to start it, with Captain Cook's stone. So I rang the Kurnell authorities that control the park there, told them I was coming over to shoot a picture of the stone, and they told me it had cost me $250. Well, $250 was like an actor's salary for a week. So I got my director of photography and we went over to Kurnell and we had a look around and nobody was there. So we snuck in, we set up and we shot the stone and we snuck away again and we didn't pay the $250. And I actually think that the very first shot in stone is a pretty fair indication of the whole attitude of the picture. In other words, beg, borrow it, or if you have to, steal it. The location for the Gravediggers pub was an actual bikie pub known as the Forth and Clyde. The Forth and Clyde was a notorious hotel through the 60s and 70s, and it's one of the places where I used to go to sort of make contact with people. It had been closed about 6 months before we started to shoot stone, so I had to negotiate with the real estate agents that had bought it. Obviously, it had lost its license and everything because of its notorious reputation. And so then Tooths came in and dressed the hotel for us. And a lot of people actually thought that the Forth and Clyde was back in business, and bikes started turning up at the pub anyway. It really had enormous character. It was one of the original bloodhouses. And believe me, the Biggie was not the first person to receive a headbutt in the bar at the Forth and Clyde. The very fact that we were shooting there also let a lot of the people in the motorcycle world know that we knew what we were doing. And as I said, we also had a certain sort of ride-in element to add to our cast from time to time. The Gravediggers Fortress was actually made up of two fortresses in the Middle Head area, the exterior and the interior. The interior is known as the Casemates, and there were three huge interconnecting gun emplacements, interconnecting in that they had interconnecting tunnels. And we shot in there for a couple of days. The Army were very, very cooperative with us and let us use their generators, and which was one of the only reasons we could actually get down underground and shoot all that for the period of time we were in there. The exterior of the fortress is at Middle Head, and it is just one of the most spectacular locations on the planet Earth. It looks straight across to the Sydney Heads with the 300-foot North Head on one side and Watson's Bay on the other. You look all the way to Manly and all the way down to Circular Quay. And it just has beautiful rolling hills and an incredible feeling. And we spent over a week shooting there, and most of the time the cast stayed overnight at the fortress. Lots of adventures were had, and now it is under control of the Parks and Wildlife Services after about 10 years of bikie parties celebrating the shooting of the picture. And you can go there and still see all the locations. To do the dawn swim, we went to a completely isolated beach called Washaway, which is a couple of miles up the harbour from the fortress. To get there, we actually received an amazing amount of cooperation from the Navy when I explained to them that we were going to do a swimming scene with some young ladies frolicking in the dawn surf. They volunteered to give us a landing ship and a crew and frogmen to protect the young ladies in the water. And sure enough, off we went. We parked the bikes at Balmoral Beach. The Navy picked us up. We went across the harbour in the night time, landed just before dawn, shot the scene, had a bit of a picnic on the beach. And the amusing part was coming back to Balmoral at about 12 o'clock in the day on a November summer's day, and the beach was packed with people, and they noticed this army craft approaching the beach. which is not all that unusual at Balmoral, but when it stopped and the front loader went down and a gang of bikies and their moles got off, walked across the beach, fired up their bikes that were parked in the street and rode off, they were quite impressed, I feel. The graveyard at St Leonard Cemetery was a key location for the picture. For 10 months of the year, it is a beautiful, subtle graveyard with gravestones and a sort of russet-coloured grass. But in October every year, it bursts into this golden flowery situation, and it was part of the bikie culture is that when somebody dies, you celebrate life. And I had the feeling that that cemetery was both a grieving for death and a celebration of life. And strangely enough, we all loved being in there. It was an amazing place. We shot there for a week, and then we had to come back to do the second shooting there, and we had an amazing feeling of peace while we were in there. The funeral scene of Stone was an inevitable scene that had to be written because funerals in the motorcycle culture are, unfortunately, a major occurrence. And I wanted to use what was just opened, which was the Gosford Freeway, and it was obviously one of the most spectacular pieces of roadway in the world. I had my 16 cast members, and I needed a large funeral cortege and couldn't obviously afford to hire extras or anything like that. So I put a notice in the Revs motorcycle paper of the time that just said anybody with a bike over 500 cc's wants to be part of an Australian motorcycle movie, turn up. And the amazing thing was that 400 turned up. We expected 50. And the police were absolutely brilliant on the day too. They cooperated with the bikies cooperated with the police. We got an amazing scene shot with very little, interference to the normal traffic and so on. And everybody had a good time. People actually rode in from Perth. I remember a guy came up to me and said, "Hey mate, I'm from the Scrub, what's going on?" Wherever the Scrub is, it's somewhere out there, you know. And those people now, fortunately, have received a sort of a legendary status in the motorcycling community and is known as the original 400.